Hey, everybody. So, this is the second part of my interview with Tony Blauer. And we're going to take off right from where we left off. He was just talking about the idea of the airbag system that we all have in our own human, response to violence. And he's going to go more in depth on that. And we're going to get into a lot more subjects on, self-defense, where it's at, what works, what doesn't work. And hopefully you're going to find that, there's just a lot of good universal truths in this. And I really appreciate a lot of the first comments that I've been getting off of this. And it's been great. I'm glad you guys are very open to bringing in other subject matter experts. And I've got some really great people lined up. But again, you can't get any better than Tony Blauer to start off on anything like this. So I hope you enjoy the second half of this interview.
And so I look at this as like, you can have good situational awareness and then suddenly you're beside somebody here and you're going, hey, what's up, man? Oh shit. And something happens. The airbag deploys. I need to weather the ambush, which is the accident, where situational awareness and skill aren't accessible yet. They're not relevant. Right. And it's a really wonderful metaphor. And also, I don't care what martial art you study or you don't study any martial art. The DNA, the genetic wiring of startle flinch is hardwired into all of us, regardless of what gender you are or your experience, which is why, going back to your story, the highly trained SF guys or special operations guys and the regular Army guys, when they were ambushed, both went, ah, shit. And because the human brain still needs that refractory delay to react and then choose an option. That's the Hicks law thing. Now, where the elite guys accelerated was then taking down the threat, because their training was better. But anyways, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, but that's great, because what you hear all the time from people is, listen, it took me X amount of years to get my black belt in whatever the martial art was, or it took me X amount of years to become a really competent combat sport practitioner. How can you teach me something worthwhile in a day or 2 days or something like that? And it's that whole concept of, I've seen it happen with people. I've seen highly trained. I saw a couple guys at the last seminar. They after they went through your program that you had, they walked away. I heard two guys say, you know what? I've been doing something, whatever they're doing for like 20-some years. I go, finally makes sense. Yeah. Like you mean, that's what people don't understand. Like you can literally walk away when you understand principles, and that's what you teach. You teach a lot of really great principles. You can immediately apply those to all your other training.
Listen, at a biomechanic, kinesthetic level, understanding how to use your startle flinch, aka organic airbag, the SPEAR system. SPEAR, by the way, is the acronym for spontaneous protection, the startle flinch, and then accelerated response. We use the kinetic energy triggered by the bad guy who makes me do some micro flinch. When you flinch, you inhale, which is what we need to be strong. We need oxygen, right? And then if I was sitting here like this and I suddenly had to get in a fight with you, I have a choice between going, oh shit, or going, oh shit. And now my fast twitch muscle fibers have been activated by you suddenly getting up or going, motherfucker, and getting up. And I'm like, whoa. And now I'm getting if I've never practiced kicking from here or pushing away danger or jamming or blocking something from here, then my brain, this is that SF newbie analogy. So I lovingly refer to the spear as like the fascia in the body. It's connective tissue, which is why somebody who can train for 20 years, 30 years go, wow, now I get it. Because they've been driving around in the car metaphor, getting ready for violence, right, not realizing that the sucker attack, the surprise attack, is somebody T-boning you. And at that moment, if that can happen, your situational awareness and your skill at blocking or parrying or intercepting is irrelevant. It's gone out the window. So, you've mentioned a couple of times the CPR doctor example, and I want to share with your audience the visual, because I tell people I can make you safer in a day. So if I ask a jiu-jitsu guy, hey, can you learn self-defense in a day? His answer is, of course not. I've been training for 7 years. I still get tapped out every class. If you ask a boxer, can you learn self-defense in a day? No, I've been boxing for 11 years. I got dropped last week by this new guy and And so this is, I say this respectfully, when you love a martial art, when you love a combat sport, that becomes your paradigm. Right. And people are still, coming back full circle to the original question, are confusing martial arts and combat sports with violent encounters and true self-defense. So and I wrote this article in 2012 when we launched our one-day course, the Be Your Own Bodyguard course, and we had so much hate from we were together. That was one of the days we talked. And we walked into that gym. I'm not going to mention the gym or the person. But remember how weird that was. This guy, here's like a grown man, who teaches mixed martial art at one of the most famous MMA gyms in the world, wanted to fucking fight me.
That's so funny.
Like walking up to me, staring at me,
control himself.
Going, yeah, you still teaching that bullshit? Yeah. Like, or something, he said something like that, right? And I was like, holy shit. And this is interesting, because that was like, hey, we're 6 seconds away from a shooting spree, but who's the active killer here? Like, either one of us could have gone off on him, but both of us, just without getting into the details, and the guy ended up apologizing, but had you and I not had the self-awareness to control ourselves, our energetic reaction to that could have escalated things too. Yeah. Very easily. This is like heavy shit. And people don't realize that their fear energetically changes their posture. Now suddenly that person's reading that posture, and now it's like, okay, who's going to go first?
Oh yeah, you didn't feed it at all, and he saw that, and it confused him that he wasn't being fed, and then he realized, and what's interesting is that's pre all of this stuff.
I forgot all about that.
That's before.
That's pre-fight.
Well, not only that, but that's before all the social media stuff. He was already just doing stuff. He was talking about something on a forum or something that he'd written. I couldn't even believe it, because it was like,
it was insane.
It was an insane response, and it was like, and I had known the individual before. I'd never seen him lose it like this before.
Yeah. And what people, you need to understand here, it was a defiance at the idea that you could learn self-defense in a day.
Exactly.
And what people do when I ask somebody that, so if I asked a neurosurgeon, can you learn medical sciences and surgery in a day? He'd say, of course not. It took me 7 years in school and this and that. We're confusing nomenclature, and the nomenclature is important. The act of self-defense is, and using my vernacular, detect and avoid all violence. 6 seconds. Avoid everything. But there are going to be scenarios where you can't. In that moment, you want to morally, ethically, legally position yourself and or psychologically buy time. Shit's happening fast. A guy comes at me with a gun and I'm not ready to fight. I don't want to go last Boy Scout on him and go, hey, if you hit me again, I'm going to kill you, right? You remember the line from Bruce Willis. I might be trying to recalibrate, going, what the fuck's going on? What's the fuck's... So I don't stand there and go and have him shoot me. I feign compliance organically. I use the organic fear and go, take it easy, man. What do you want? I'll give you whatever you need. And then I'm going, okay, wait a minute. That doesn't look like a real gun. He's covering his face. He's making an attempt to conceal his identity. Oh, no, that is a real gun, and he's not covering his face. And he's now saying, get in the back of my car, get in the trunk. And I'm going, oh, that's a secondary crime scene. This isn't good, right? But using the psychology of fear and understanding the body language of buying time allows me to go, dude, this is your choiceless choice. Violence doesn't care what martial art you study. You're here right now. What are you going to do? And what I need people to understand is when I put together the Be Your Own Bodyguard course, it wasn't like, oh, I know how I can capitalize on fear. That was 30 years after when I launched 2012. I had started teaching in 77 and figured out a whole bunch of shit. And then went, if you said, hey, I can't teach my family, Tony, I want you to teach them, I trust you, but I can only afford a day. It was literally, I said, what are the most essential things that I would teach somebody in a day? And it was how to improve the situational awareness and the connection between self-awareness. If you don't realize you're an arrogant prick, conceited, you're looking for trouble, you're a shitty... When I drink, and I don't drink a lot, I'm even fucking funnier than I am right now. Like, I'm a happy drunk. Right. And you know people that are like, hey, don't let that guy drink because
Yeah,
there will be a
drink,
fight,
yeah.
right? So like if you don't have that self-awareness, then you create problems. So self-awareness actually informs or amplifies situational awareness. Then we need a D2 phase, and then if push comes to shove, we need to be able to protect ourselves. So what people do is when you ask them, if you ask a subject matter expert, can you learn to defend yourself in a day? They are unconsciously, because they don't understand the program, unconsciously going, I'm still learning, I've been training for 20 years, so no.
Right.
As opposed to, in the metaphors I gave, do I need to become a fireman to learn how to use a fire extinguisher? No. How long will it take me to learn a fire extinguisher? 5 minutes. Do you want to get a black belt in fire extinguisher? No. If I said to you, Tim, I'm going to teach you to use a fire extinguisher, you'll come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it's a 6-month course. And you go, well, isn't it just pull the pin and do this? Yeah. So why do I have to train for 6 months? It's because how long the course is. Yeah, but I know how to do it right away. Well, we're going to do scenarios where you run into another room. Okay, well, like why 6 months? In other words, you could learn how to use a fire extinguisher, but it doesn't make you a firefighter. Right. You can learn, again, CPR, tactical first aid, how to put on a tourniquet and save somebody's life, but it doesn't make you a doctor or a paramedic. Right. And so some of the flack that you and I get from experts is because they're confusing. We're teaching people tactical first aid as a metaphor. We're not teaching them to be paramedics or doctors. Yeah. We're teaching them to create time and space in their life, in their medical emergency metaphor / violent encounter.
Yeah, the analogy I use with people is I tell people all the time, if I drug in a 8-foot slab of beautiful Italian marble and I brought in the best artistic chiseling sets for everybody in the class, and I said, okay, nobody leaves until I walk in here and I see Michelangelo's David. Okay, we know probably it could be thousands of years and that would never happen. But if I came in with that same marble and I came in, I say I had 40 people in class, I came in with 40 sledgehammers, and I said, okay, until this thing's a pile of rubble, nobody gets to eat lunch. Believe me, they'd find a way to get that taken care of. And what I try to tell people is it's the difference between confusing what it takes to become an elite athlete, an elite combat practitioner, versus the skill sets of destruction or self-defense, which are very straightforward, easy to understand, easy to get your.
We have so many similar things, man, and I love that because in case you missed that, because it's kind of heavy and deep, the Michelangelo representation was like seeing like Bruce Lee in some Enter the Dragon moment, or Anderson Silva, taking out somebody like high level precision. So Michelangelo's high level precision, but if I said take this sledgehammer and smash this, that's a primal gross motor movement. And I used to, and it's so funny what I smiled is I would tell people a very dangerous, scary thing just happened to you. You realize it was a practical joke, but it scared the shit out of you. Right. And you're shaking. You had to sit down after because you thought you were going to die, and you're shaking. And I go, that guy over there laughing, he's the guy that did that to you. Right. And I said, well, hey, oh wait, what are you doing? And you're like, that motherfucker. And I go, I want you to write him a letter and tell him what he did wasn't nice. Okay, and here's an ink, and I would say, here's ink and here's a quill, and heretofore, and you'd be shaking, like when you're like, you've had that adrenaline dump, something horrible happened, and you're like, whoa, I'm like shaking like this. Write a letter. You can't think clearly. You can't even write. I said, and you go, I need a few minutes to write a letter. Or you can take this baseball bat and run over there and just let him have it. And you go, and so, really simple. When it's time, when I teach my students, when it's time to move, we want a primal gross motor movement. We want something that we could do if all of a sudden I heard something at 3 a.m. and I went, what the fuck? Right. Could I move from here and start moving without my brain going, you're not in a stance, you're not in. Right. And if you've got the skill set, we always say, like I said earlier, spear's a bridge to your next move, so that your personal airbag deploys. If it had the effect that it wanted, you now and always remember, force must parallel danger. We can't emphasize that enough, because we try to inspire people to protect themselves and their family. But your force must parallel danger, especially in our litigious world. You just can't go crazy.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's interesting because I've shown people like getting them to say stomp, like we'll do something like, stomping in the throat, and that throws people off, because what's strange is when they do, when they have to do a movement that they could easily do any other time, but they have to do it on the human body, and they understand they put all these barriers in front of them. And what's so interesting is I've had people, they'll reach out, they'll do, all this kind of weird stuff, and then I'll say, okay, you got a Coke can in front of you, and you're gonna stomp the Coke can as hard as you can. I said, show me how you do that in slow motion. I run them through the whole thing. They do it perfectly every time. The body weight's over it, everything's there. They have the mechanical ability to do it. So they're just doing work, that they don't realize, and you're gonna go to work on the human body. And once you, like you gave her the reasoning for why she'd need that information, and all of a sudden she stopped thinking about her and she started thinking about the results she wanted to get because she saw, the threat. And I think that's huge for people. And it comes back to this whole idea of recognizing, I think, as an instructor, I think one of the biggest changes in my life was when I finally realized that most people don't want to become an instructor. Right. They actually, what they're really coming to you for is they want to learn how to manage their fear. They want to learn how to live a life that minimizes the chance of ever needing self-defense. And when you clearly show them, hey, here's all the stuff that you don't have to respond to. Here's how you can live a life. And my ego might get bruised and things like that, but you're going to live a great life this way, versus, thinking you have to respond in these areas. And that to me is the biggest, especially now we see it with social media. People are so easy to say things they would never say to another person in front of them. And they can make such mistakes right now if they let their emotions get away. And they don't realize there's a whole other group of people out there that don't respond on the keyboard. Right. They will respond in kind, and they will respond physically if you do that. And to me, I think it's even more important now that we're focusing. I mean, when I have a new class, I assume maybe one person in that class will want to take training beyond the initial class. It's just because, for a variety of reasons. So my job there is to sit there and give them the facts as I see it, give them the best information I can give them. But my real goal is for them to make better decisions in their daily life, because that's it, And that is a really viable skill set. And I get a lot more, and that's what I loved about, I forgot the story you were telling, but it was similar to the ones I get, where it's so great to get that call or
This almost happened.
Yeah, but because I took your class, the old me would have done this. Right. But because I took your class, I got myself out of there, or I didn't do that, or my family's safe now. To me, that's way more valuable to me than when my operators, the operators you get to train, go out and they do their job and they use your information, but you expect them to do well, And I love that, but I really like the person that really shouldn't experience violence being able to use the skill sets that you give them to avoid ever having to deal with it. To me, I think that's probably the biggest change. When people go for a self-defense course, I want to take care of that first. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is when you work with combat sport guys who may initially be like, yeah, whatever, what can you teach me? And then you give them something, they realize that, oh, I've been operating in this world where I'm making a lot of assumptions. I'm assuming everything's gonna be one-on-one. I'm assuming that I don't have to take in parameters that, that anybody here could jump in. I walk out, like what I'll do to guys, I remember I took guys one time and I put them in an octagon that we had at this place, and we had everything set up with a ref, boom. And then we took all those people and they put on street clothes. We took them outside, and I put the guy in there and go, yeah, that's the guy you think you got to deal with, but just realize anybody here can jump in and anybody can have weapons.
That's great.
And to see these same guys who are extremely confident in the ring realize, oh, there's a lot more I got to pay attention to now. Does that mean that they're shitty at what they do? No.
Yeah.
Does it mean that
isn't it
they're
weird?
training
it's
that?
so weird
like,
how defensive people get.
It's just different, And I couldn't do what you do. I tell the guy all the time, I go, look at me. I go, I'm way beyond my competitive years. And I said, I can't jump in the ring and do what you do under your conditions. I said, but the cool thing about violence is, if I train people for when the predator makes a mistake and gives them an opportunity. I want my people to know how to exploit that opportunity. And I'm hoping that the mistake the predator will make is triggering something to, before it ever gets to that violent act, that my person recognizes it and gets themselves out of there. You know, that to me would be the ultimate win. But in no way, shape, or form, I know you're a huge combat sport fan, and I am too. I love it. You know, I live here in Vegas. We get to see it all the time. I love combat. I grew up on it. You know, I mean, you know, especially when we grew up, because we didn't have MMA, so we had boxing, we had stuff. I mean, it's not putting it down. If anything, my guys come back, you know, any of the guys that are BJJ guys or MMA guys, they come back and they go, shit, Tim, it's really easy. I go, I can just take the principles you taught me, overlay it with my training, and say, oh, hey,
it just augments everything.
This works in the ring, this works for violence, you know, like, you know, and they understand. They go, hey, if you just understand that.
When you did, I got to interrupt because you did that. I use that. You're the one that brought that to my attention. the two guys in South America that got destroyed at that gas station fight with the 2x4s or whatever. But you know, like if you look at their physique, their body fat composition, a highlight reel, you go, these guys are badasses. And then, you know, like a small group of thugs destroyed them because it was those guys went out and thought they were going to friggin' spar.
Very unidirectional, very, very focused on one thing, and they were just vulnerable. They didn't have the situational awareness behind them.
But so this is the big mistake that a lot of, if you're listening to this and you are a martial artist of a different system and you're kind of checking out, who's this guy Blauer, what's this guy Tim? You know, I say what you're saying in a different way, and I tell people right up, I'm not teaching you how to fight, I'm teaching you how to not fight. You know, and now you can see a lot of people go, you know, I go, like, you don't understand. In this day and age, when I went to school, when you went to school, the most dangerous guy in my high school was a guy who you reputedly heard had kicked somebody in the balls, but no one was a witness to it. Right. And back in the 70s, this idea, like, that guy kicked, was he a psycho to kick someone in the balls? Now it's like, that guy's going to come back and shoot you. Like today, like you asked early on, like, how have things changed? Well, in the martial art world, we still think everything we do is self-defense, but the predators changed. They're so brazen now. What somebody will do just because you slighted them or looked at them sideways is, and there were always nutcases like that back in the 70s and 80s or whatever, but they weren't in your school and they weren't at your work and they weren't. So yeah, it's a different time. And to come full circle, if I told you, hey, do you brush your teeth and floss? Well, that's a type of self-defense. Do you check the label on stuff, expiration date? Do you try to eat organic? Well, that's the type of self-defense. Do you try to, you know, supplement stuff because you know our crops aren't producing the right blah, blah, blah. So that's a type of self-defense. Do you look both ways when you cross the street? That's a type of self-defense. The only type of self-defense people don't practice is actually self-defense.
That's so interesting because, like you said, I don't have to be a dentist to be able to know how to brush and floss my teeth. I don't need to be an organic farmer to know to buy organic, you know, foods. I don't have to understand everything in the supplement industry. I don't have to be a PhD to do my own supplements. I can do all that and prevent all that with just, you know, putting in a little bit of time to learn, you know, just the basics can make a huge difference in your life. And that's really what self-defense is all about, you know. It's not, like I said, it's rare when you get to train a guy over the years and make him become an instructor and pass on that information. Those guys are awesome, and that's great. But, you know, for me, I mean, just all the people that I've trained, we figured it out one day. It's usually about 1 in 1,000 people that we train that actually takes it to that level, that wants to put the time in to be an instructor. So what does that mean? You dismiss everybody else? No, you know, there's a lot of great information. And my favorite class to do, and it's kind of like, and that's what I loved about when I watched you train. I love people that don't know anything about what I train, you know, and you walk in here and you just see the light bulbs go and you sit there and you get some good questions and feedback. But to have guys, like I had a couple of guys in there, they had some pretty good operators that were in there. And I had a couple of guys who were very complimentary, and they'd say, you know, like I heard them say to you, shit, I've been doing such and such for like 20 years and I never understood why that worked that way. And it just crystal clear now, you know, and that to me is super rewarding to get that. But I think that's funny. I think what I wanted people to get out of this, and I thought you're really, you know, initially when I heard that you tell the story about being on the plane, I just think that's a concept that most people don't get. I think people think, I think what stops a lot of people from seeking out this information is they think they have to put an incredible amount of time. They have to almost be a professional to do it. They have to commit professionally to learning this stuff. Whereas that's not the case at all. And the goal is not to make you professional. The goal is to keep you safe.
Right.
And choose, like you said, choose safety. And that's it. And it's a great way to do it. And you don't have to live it. You know, you don't have to live 24/7, you know, sparring and, you know, constantly learning weapons and doing stuff. But understanding the principles, it's the same way, like you said, how to operate the fire extinguisher, how to, you know, we tell people all the time, why do you teach your kids how to swim? You know, do you teach your kids how to swim because you want them to be Michael Phelps? No, you don't want them to drown, you know, and you can, in a couple of swim lessons, you can get a kid to a point to where they're pretty competent. And same thing, now that means some of those kids will go on to become competitive swimmers and do that, but it's a completely different world. But yeah, I think your message is just really, really strong. And, you know, I just appreciate your approach to it, because you got to have thick skin to do this, especially in the age of social media, because people will soundbite you. They'll take one small portion of your training and they'll try to say this is what it represents. They won't understand what they're looking at.
The next time I'm back in Vegas, we'll do a session where we just read mean tweets.
Oh, they're fantastic. Yeah, you know, that's always fun.
Like there was one that I got recently, is like, you know, who's this guy Tony Blauer? I see no evidence that he has any experience to be teaching self-defense. Right. And I answered him, I go, sir, apparently you're on the internet. Have you Googled me? Yeah. Like just crazy, like, where, you know, but it's funny. You're right. You have to have thick skin, and you've got to balance the whole never read the comments, you know, and
you realize like I look at it, I'm far more in tune with the people that, you know, reach out to you and tell you, you know how it is. You probably get 10 to 20 positive responses for every one negative one that you get. And you discount those positive ones sometimes. You know, you don't give them what they are. I mean, those people, you made a difference in their life. They got what you were trying to say. They put the time in. What's really funny, like even this, you know, I anticipate the reason I'm going to break this up is because people just don't watch. What's funny, I don't know if you've ever done this. You put a video out, and you can tell they only watched part of it, because what they're criticizing you about was handled in the second half of the video. Right. But they didn't have they didn't put the time into, you know, getting that portion.
Well, this is this era we're in where people just, they want the answer, quick fix. Yeah. You know, so you're right. But the message, I think, you know, if you are still listening to this, and this is number 4 or 5, and however it's cut up, you could be a 10th degree black belt, you could be a combat sport athlete, you could be a beginner. That doesn't mean you understand the mind of the predator. It doesn't mean you understand how kill zones are set up in terms of whether it's a mugging or an abduction or what have you. It doesn't mean you understand the neuroscience of startle flinch and how that overrides your complex motor skills. And this is all stuff that if you learned it, and you can learn it really quickly because it's all based on either psychology or science or research, when you understand that, it's, in your case, like some of your most potent stuff is sobering. It's to make you realize, let's not be cavalier. What would you do if this guy walked up to you? Yeah, I'd fuck that guy up. Okay, this is this guy's background. He's actually a professional murderer. Yeah. Do you really think that you're gonna, I mean, you get the point. So the idea here is the fundamental baseline courses that Tim and I teach are really about making you safer by educating you. Almost I like the metaphor of, like, you know, you can come here and shoot, and everyone that shoots here who's not a regular shooter is afraid of the gun. Right. They're afraid of the recoil. They're afraid of the sound. They're afraid of a double feed, a stovepipe. How do I clear this? Sir, range guy, here, take my gun. And I tell people this when you do an armorer's course, you don't shoot, but when you're finished an armorer's course, you're a better shooter. because you've demystified this weapon, and when you hold it, you go, I know what's inside it. So I like in my courses, like this is like an armor's course. I'm teaching you how to clear an emotional, psychological malfunction. I'm teaching you how your weapon system works, right? And when you understand that, it doesn't matter what your background is, because your background is, if you have a martial background, what your fixation is on a neuron that you think is going to solve the problem for you. Yeah. It's on this move that you believe in. And it very well might solve the problem, but it's this idea in this day and age, do you really want to be in the D3 fight? Right? Where, like you said, you know, you're here smashing a guy and then his buddy stabs you or kicks you from behind, or, you know, it's just the most important thing that you can learn how to do is avoid violence at all cost.
Yeah, no, that's a great place to end this. Where is the best place for people to, I mean, we're gonna put everything in the show notes, but where would you like people to start out? Like if somebody said, hey, listen, Tony, you don't have time to talk to me right now, where should I go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so again, depending on who you are, because we've got different verticals in our company, right? If you're a scenario trainer, go to our high gear page. If you're military law enforcement, go to the SPEAR system. If you want to be an instructor, the SPEAR page. If you're general public, you know, there's a protocol. But let's say you go, I just want to start at the beginning. We have a 2-hour course called Essentials of Personal Safety, which teach you our just foundational information on how to convert the startle flinch into an airbag that would keep danger away from you, understanding situational awareness. After that 2 hours, it's a small nibble, it's a sample. You go, holy shit, this is cool. Or you go, I hate this shit, okay? You spent 2 hours. The next thing we do is I started as a pivot during the pandemic, teaching online every week.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was great.
And it's crazy. I have twice as many students online as I ever had when I ran schools.
That's wild.
And I'm having a blast. We're coming up. If you had told me a year ago, you're going to be teaching classes by Zoom and you're going to do these 5 drills, I'd go, you can't do that on Zoom. I've gotten so insanely creative. We're doing gunfighting classes on Zoom. We're doing multiple assailant shit, like crazy stuff. Is it missing an element of the tactile? Like, yeah, you can't punch somebody in the throat on Zoom. But our stuff has so much of the psychology and neuroscience and understanding how and why we move that it works. So we have a course called the Garage Gym, which originally I hated the name. It was like, because people thought it was just fitness. And then I said to the group, I said, hey guys, I have buyer's remorse on the name. I just quickly said, hey, come train with me in my garage. I called it the Garage Gym, and now we're 3 months in. We got like 100+ people in it. I want to change the name. And the next day, I said, anyone have any ideas? Next day, 2 people from Europe said, garage is the etymology of it, origination of it was from France, garage, and it was, if Jessie sees this, she'll be laughing at my French, but it was a place of shelter, a place to gather, and a place of shelter. And all of a sudden, like when you started to study that, I went, you know, that's what we're doing. Yeah. It came about, and so I like the Garage Gym when you understand, again, the substance under it. So we do that, and you can, you know, that's $6 a class. I mean, you can't train with you or me for $6 live. Someone wants to book you for a day. We don't have to say prices, but it's like way over 1,000 times more than that. And so there's the Garage Gym. When things open up again, we had our 1-day Be Your Own Bodyguard, which is a live class. And then we've got like a train the trainer track. So it depends where you are. But if you just go to my main website, Blauer Training Systems, my last name, BLAUER, trainingsystems.com, that kind of like cascades into everything.
That's awesome. All of that will be in the show notes. And I just got to tell everybody, you know, it's funny. I don't know why it's so hard in our industry for people to do what Tony and I are doing right now. He's one of the few guys in the industry that's really easy to talk to. We share information, and no one person is, you know, we talked about this before. If you're interested in the subject, I know you're not only going to have my stuff up on the shelf. I hope to God you'd have, you know, more than just my stuff on the shelf. And if you don't have any of Tony's stuff, you need to get it, because he's probably one of the most seminal thinkers in our industry, and put in consistent thought over the years. And you know how you how you really tell is if you looked at his stuff from 20 years ago and you look at today, it has evolved. Just like if you don't evolve and you keep changing, now his principles are rock solid, but he consistently tweaks his methods and gets them better and better. And that tells me that you're not stuck with legacy. You just want the best for your customers, and you'll make the changes. I mean, there's stuff that I used to do that I would never do anymore. Why? I found better methods for my people, and I really appreciate that, because there are those that just don't do that. And I appreciate it. But hey, thanks for your time, man. It was really great.
And thank you, buddy. So good to see you again.
Awesome.
And I do want to say one other thing that you started to touch on it, but you're one of the only guys in the world that ever backed me or supported me back in the day, which says everything about, again, your professionalism and your ethics, where it's unfortunate, and we saw it in kung fu movies, Shaw Brother movies, like, this style versus this style. It's always this division of who's got the best for this and who's got the best for that. And it doesn't need to be that way. The objective, my mission is to make good humans safer.
Exactly.
And that's all it is. So
exactly. Well, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I hope you enjoyed it.
Hey, so listen, make sure you take advantage. Look in the links below. You're going to see various links to Tony's opportunities that he's shared with you. Make sure you check it out. He truly is, just like I just said, he's one of the unique thinkers in the industry, and get some value from the 40 years he's been doing this. If you only learn one new thing, that's useful to you whenever you seek out new information, that's awesome. So anyways, looking forward to your comments, questions. And again, we're going to mix it up. I'm going to have interviews with subject matter experts that I think are important. I will get back to the straightforward. Here's how to break the body. Here's how to do this. I'm going to just make sure there's all sorts of things. I'm going to also bring in some guys from special operations community. We're going to do some active shooter stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff coming. But again, it's important that if this subject's of importance to you, that you got to hear from all sides. And it's not all punching and kicking, guys. It really isn't. I mean, that's important, but not as important as you think. If your human machine isn't operating correctly first, all that won't make the difference. So anyways, hope you enjoyed it, and all the best.